Hello and welcome to the Studio 7 podcast with your hosts Joshy Lee and Luciano D'Amato.
Okay, another week, another film.
Mm-hmm.
Seems we're doing a lot of these reviews lately.
Yeah. It's fun though.
It is, yeah. I'm enjoying it. It's a nice change of pace.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry though, for anybody who's longing for another industry episode.
It will be coming
soon, yeah. And it will be about Korean and Asian cinema. So, get ready for that one.
Yeah. And again, thanks to everyone that voted on Instagram.
Yep.
For these, we will be putting up a little mini poll against two films. Last week for this one, it was Invisible Man versus Dark Waters.
Yeah.
And obviously, Invisible Man won.
Yeah.
So
it was 60-40, so it's quite close.
Mm-hmm.
I can see why people probably went for Invisible Man.
I'm glad they did, to be honest.
Yeah.
I had good fun watching it.
So, are we ready to jump straight in?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Welcome to another episode of the Studio 7 podcast. I think this is number 7 for anyone who's counting. This one is a review of The Invisible Man, directed by Leigh Whannel and starring Elisabeth Moss.
Mm-hmm. Who was brilliant.
Yeah. So it just came out today. This is Universal's reimagining?
I'd say reimagining.
Yeah, it's not quite a reboot.
No.
It's a reimagining of their Invisible Man IP character, which they used to feature in a lot of films back in like the 50s and 60s. There was like a whole sub-section of Universal horror films. You know, they had like The Mummy and Frankenstein.
Yeah.
The Werewolf Man, and then obviously The Invisible Man, as well as others. A bit of background, they did try to restart their monster movie franchises a few years ago with the Mummy reboot with Tom Cruise.
What was it called? The Dark Universe?
The Dark Universe, yeah. It even came up on the title card before the film. Talk about putting your first foot forward, right? Gosh.
I mean, fair play. I mean, start as you mean to go forward, but yeah, it's fair to say that didn't happen exactly as they were obviously planning.
No.
It would have been cool to see. I mean, especially in the world now with franchises, I think it was a smart move. I just feel like they may have rushed it just a little bit too much.
Yeah, this is the Tom Cruise Mummy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm really liking the way that they've taken this one. It's a much more realistic, modern take. Instead of trying to, basically, with the Mummy, it felt more like a rehash, but just trying to add as much action as possible to make it modern. Where instead this one actually took the monster and made it modern.
Yeah.
And twisted the whole idea of how the monster came about, and you know.
This is why it's actually really clever that after following the mess of the Dark Universe and that not going the way they wanted, they sort of swept the board clean and then left it a few years, and then suddenly this popped up. I didn't even know it was in production.
No.
I'm guessing Leigh Whannel went to them with an idea rather than they went to him. And if you watch the film, you'll probably get what we mean by that, as in it's very high. I mean, there's high concept already in that it's about an invisible man, but it's another level as well on top of that, which you'll sort of realize when you watch the film.
Should we just make this a spoiler?
It's gonna be. They all end up being a spoiler, don't they? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So what we're trying to say is, yes, it's about an invisible man. But it is wrapped in the story of a domestic violence case.
Yes.
And probably one of the best domestic violence films that I've probably seen.
Yes.
Definitely up there.
Yeah.
You really feel for her. You make a great job of showing you what she's going through from different perspectives through different characters.
Yeah.
So you can kind of they kind of make you question whether it's her trauma that's making her think these things, or if there is an actual invisible man coming after her.
Yeah.
obviously due to the title, they had to go with the Invisible Man side.
That's the cool thing. I mean, you just picked up on something there, because if they wanted to, they could have not. So basically, what happens in the film is, you start the film and you actually don't see their relationship, how it usually is. So you have no idea. You could tell that obviously she's afraid of this guy, which she shouldn't be, because they're in a relationship together, and she's trying to leave. And anyway, she leaves in the middle of the night, and she goes to stay with some friends, and basically vows to stay away from him, turn her life around, and never be in that controlling situation ever again. Weird stuff starts happening. She starts getting visits and things sent to her that only her ex that she just got away from would have known. And then things start to become more apparent. He's obviously a tech designer, engineer, and he's working on optics.
Optics specialist.
Yeah, and you don't quite know exactly what that means, but obviously, with the title, you can guess. And anyway, throughout the film, it becomes apparent that he's not missing or dead, as she thought. He's still very much alive, and he's tracking her down, and he still wants to be in her life and wants to control her life. And like you just said, they could have not actually revealed any sort of suit.
No.
They could have actually made this into a more obscure film where you don't even leave the end of the film not knowing if she was going crazy, if she was in an abusive relationship, or if there was something more at play here.
I almost feel like Leigh Whannel may have went to Universal and kind of said, hey, I want to do this film on domestic violence where she escapes and she believes that this guy is following her and that he's invisible. I want to call it the Invisible Man. Do you reckon we could do that? And then they were like, yeah, but we want to see an invisible man. Like, we want him to be there. And I think that's where that bit came out. If that is how it happened, he's managed to merge both those ideas very well.
Almost perfectly.
But something else that kind of leads me to that is how the film begins. You don't actually see how they are together pre-breakup or pre-escape.
Yes.
So you are completely you're literally just left to hearing things from her side. You never hear things from his side. But obviously, people, when it comes to these domestic cases, people want to know both sides. But you're only hearing one, and this one sounds very crazy. So you'll then chuck these curveballs of like, is she just making this up? Because no one else is
exaggerating. Is she making it out worse than it is? Because this is the thing. Actually, watching the start of the film, it's really funny actually, because she's lying in bed in this big, like, king size bed in this beautiful seafront apartment that must be like a million pound house. And you're thinking, well, she hasn't got it that bad. And you never actually see why.
Well, that's what
or what was so bad to cause her to leave. You just take it on her word for it. And Elisabeth Moss is a great actress actually in portraying that. She's very understated in her acting. So it does come across that way, as in.
Because obviously it's a traumatic thing. So she's going to be exaggerating everything in her head anyway. It's like when you watch a scary film and then a noise goes off in your house, like a dripping in the pipe in the wall or something, and you're like, what was that? It's something on the wall. But you've just blocked that out so much that you didn't know it existed until your senses were heightened. So it kind of leads itself to that. And because no one's around, and obviously it's a film, they're trying to show you what she's seeing from her point of view. I thought that was really clever. And then something else which kind of hints to what you were just saying then about her being in this beautiful big house was the brother saying during when he was trying to get her to sign sign back the will, is he was there saying loads of women have come and tried to get his money, basically. So he was basically saying like, there's no point in bullshit anymore. Just come and get the money.
Which is really good actually, because now thinking about it, that was probably Leigh Whannel's way of addressing that issue in the domestic abuse area, because that is one of the things that people come up with is like, so when a woman accuses a man, if that man's successful or rich, they'll be like, oh well, you're just saying that because you want to get something off him, don't you? Or you're only with him in the first place because you were trying to use him for this and that. And so Leigh Whannel actually knows that that's one of the things that people bring up when people try and talk out about domestic abuse. So he said, all right, let's bring that into the fold as well. It was a very well-rounded, well-balanced film.
Mm-hmm.
The horror elements, you could actually say, are, although they run throughout the whole thing, aren't actually the main focus of the film.
No.
I do think he's genuinely gone in there to make a film about domestic abuse and domestic violence and what it's like living with a
traumatic,
narcissist who controls you, and the trauma that
the PTSD.
the PTSD, the
Yeah.
effects it leaves on the victims.
Mm-hmm.
So huge shout out for that. And like you were saying, it's similar to the Joker, in the sense that they've used. He's taken an IP, an important property of Universal, which has been a staple over the past century, just like Warner Bros. Did with
Todd Phillips.
And Todd Phillips did with Joker, and then used these characters in their worlds to really send a message, or to raise an issue, or to get us to discuss.
Yeah, use them as capsules to tell a bigger story.
Yeah.
But it gets it out to a bigger audience.
Yeah,
So
through the guise of entertainment.
Yeah, like if this film was called something like PTSD or post-traumatic or domestic,
boyfriend.
domestic violence.
Yeah,
Not even quarter of the people would go and see it, but because it's got such a big title attached to it as The Invisible Man, yeah, people are going to go watch it because it's a title that clicks in your head. It may not have the biggest following, but it's definitely going to ring some alarm bells to go, oh, I recognize that title. I'm going to go and watch what they've done to that.
Yeah. I think another thing it will do that's good is if there's any guys out there with toxic masculinity traits, I think this film will open their eyes to them about how their actions can affect other people. Yeah, it's really interesting how he managed to and I think this is the other good thing, that so the twist with this one is he can go invisible, not through any sort of science experiment or any superpower or anything like that. It's just a suit that he's made, which it seems very realistic and looks very real world, practical.
Like if you were going to make an invisible suit, that is realistic what it would be like.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you'll probably, if you haven't watched the film already, you probably should watch it before listening to this. So we're just going to keep talking as if you have seen it. But obviously the suit is covered in, I'm guessing they wanted it horror-like to look like eyeballs.
Yeah.
Because that did make my skin crawl just a little bit. But obviously it's meant to be like lots of different cameras / projectors. So I'm guessing it is literally like it records and then projects or something like that. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, it's simultaneously recording and projecting.
Yeah, I think it's good that they didn't go into the science of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the film left it up to your imagination, which is something that I will applaud Leigh Whannel for. Yeah. Because there's way too much exposition in films.
Yes.
And it's nice to just leave it to the audience and to let us figure some things out.
But there was enough that there was a foundation for you to build on as an audience, because it can be just as bad the other way around when they don't give you anything and then you're sat there trying to work it out instead of watching the film. Like that frustrates me a lot when but anyway, sorry, carry on.
It's
great film all around. I think
the visuals as well blew me away. How you would flick between the perspective of the Invisible Man and to the perspective of someone possibly watching the Invisible Man, which is weird to say because he's invisible. But there's these long kind of swooping tracking shots which normally occur when you're tracking someone down hallways or halls or paths or something, but the camera would just be tracking to nothing but would feel like someone is there, and you'd almost feel like you're watching someone as well.
In those shots and scenes, I found myself like literally scouring every part of the frame, like okay, what's happening, there's got to be something.
And it would, like, because obviously a lot of the time with cinematography is when done right, is there's always a momentum which moves the camera. So say if someone would go to grab a cup on the table, that's when the camera would pan with the arm. Or if someone, like when you're blocking a scene, if you need to go and show something on the other side of the room, you would have one of your characters stand up, move, and the camera would pan with that person to go and find that thing on the shelf or whatever you're trying to show. But you found yourself in this, she would turn around to go somewhere or pick something up, and then the camera would start the momentum and then wouldn't stop, as if it was panning to someone or something, but it was never there. So you're there literally like scouring all over the thing, like where's the footprint, where's the breath, where's the moving cloth, where's the pillow that's like denting it. It kind of made you feel anxious with her.
And I hope that when they were doing it, they did have someone in those scenes, standing in, and you know, so they played out the whole scenes as if, you know,
I think they
he
did.
was there. And then
Yeah.
what could be cool as well is I'm pretty sure like not all of those scenes there even was an invisible man. So like he was like
some of the
in the script, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
So they
yeah,
probably
yeah.
wrote it where in some of those scenes
There isn't actually anyone there.
There isn't actually
That's
anyone
just
there.
her
Exactly.
imagining that someone's watching her.
Yeah.
Because there were a few times where she was like typing like to know when someone's watching you and all this kind of stuff, and you're there like, okay, how did she obviously just feels that way because obviously she's escaped this person. She's been on 24/7 watch for however many years, and she's now, you know, still imagining that she's being watched. Anything that she does, anywhere she goes, she's being monitored. So that she obviously feels that same way. So yeah, I do feel like the first few times, because I don't know if you noticed, there's like a little sound effect of the cameras,
Like
yeah,
repositioning.
yeah, and a lot of the times, even at the beginning, there was that little like kind of sound that would like come in and like creak and stuff. I feel like if we went back through and watched again, we would know if he was there or not,
yeah.
because there would be this little sly sound effect. And going into that, the sound design of this film was ridiculous.
Insane, yeah.
The score was great. It wasn't anything unique or completely different, but it was the way that it was used and manipulated the scenes, especially in the beginning. Like there were these long sweeping panning shots as she's getting dressed to escape, and then you just hear this big like boom, and all of a sudden you're there like there's no sound at all apart from her footsteps, and then all of a sudden this sound effect comes out of everywhere.
And you're
like
on edge,
you're like on the edge of your seat, like, oh my god, is he gonna come out the room? Is he gonna come out the room? And then she keeps looking at the phone. No, he's still asleep. You know, like, oh my god, boom, oh my god, is he coming now? Is he coming now? And it's constantly like putting you on edge right up until she gets into the car.
He really is a master of suspense and building the atmosphere in this film, and it really does pay off. And so the director is Leigh Whannel, who you might recognize if you're into film or the Saw series at least. He wrote the original with James Wan, and then they went on to write and collaborate on Insidious. Leigh Whannel directed the third one as well as writing the first three, I think. Then he did 2018's Upgrade, which was a cool sci-fi thriller, sort of like.
And he uses some of the techniques in this as well.
Yeah.
Very cleverly.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't feel like, obviously Upgrade. It was very specific to that type of movie. But yeah, the way he used it here is very smooth and in some of the actiony scenes that happen.
And yeah, so what's interesting is that now he's sort of making a name for himself as his own, director, and he's really shown what he's learned and picked up through collaborating with all these other great filmmakers over the years. And he's been on sets as a writer, as an actor,
Also as an actor, yeah.
Yeah, and as a producer. So he's obviously taken all this, and now he's finally getting to give back, and he's doing it in an awesome way. And I'm really glad we're getting to see this other side to him.
And I'm now really excited to see what else he can do as well.
Yeah, well, I just looked on IMDb, and apparently he's got Escape from New York.
Okay.
Reboot coming up. So
is that another Universal?
It would be, yeah.
Would that like a 2-picture deal or something?
Could be, very well could be, yeah. Well, he's obviously proved himself now. So like, yeah, just going back to Invisible Man, one of the other things I think that shows his skill set as a writer and director is, although the film's about domestic violence, about abuse and control and stuff like that, and usually it is in most cases from the men's side directed at the woman in the relationship, and obviously to do that you've got to show the men in a bad light. But what he does is he balances it out by having this cop character who Elisabeth Moss goes to stay with after she escapes her ex, the controlling ex, and this guy is a policeman and he's got a daughter, and he takes her in and he watches over, and you can see that not everybody around her or
the male
figures around her aren't sort of this way inclined. It is something.
It was a nice balance of. It was a nice way to say, look, this is an issue, but I'm not saying that this is everyone's issue.
No. Yeah.
But it is something that needs to be brought to light, and it was really nice to show the scene that they would have with James, the cop guy, and his daughter. Was it Sydney.
Yeah.
It was nice when they had that little moment where it was almost like they were their own little family.
Yeah.
It was a nice change to see in the character, but also to show like you just had the wrong hand in this game of poker. You went off and you found this guy who you thought was Mr. Right, but actually you could have went off with this guy or someone similar to this guy, and then this would have been your life.
Yeah.
And how when she's in these moments, like there's no sign of trauma at all. She's almost like herself. She's play fighting. She's messing about. She's joking. And you kind of like sit back and you're like, oh, that was really sweet. And I even found myself like choking up at one point when you know she's offering to pay for her tuition, all this kind of stuff. So I was like, oh, that's
that whole
genuine
scene
and
was
feels
really
real.
well done. Yeah. And it showed another light to her, because before that you'd only seen her stressed and traumatized.
Yeah.
And then after that you only see her stressed and traumatized. So that's a nice little break. And it also goes away to showing that you know, everybody you interact with every day, that might not always be who they are. It might just be who they are at this moment in time because of what they're going through, or what they want you to see. In the case of her controlling ex-boyfriend. Yeah. So yeah, surprising. Well, I know I saw the trailer and what I heard about it, and it looked good, and I was expecting good things, but I was
also
pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, definitely. All right, wrap it up there. Put a little rate into it.
Yeah. So I've got a figure in my head. It hasn't changed actually since I left the cinema, and I think it's a fair.
What's yours?
Shall we write it down and then do that? Nah. 7 out of 10 for me. I think a solid 7. Yeah.
I was fluctuating between 7.5 and 8. I feel like if it went more down the, obviously they can't because it's a property, so they had to show the Invisible Man. But I feel like if they'd done it more about her PTSD and hinting that it's just the trauma that's making her think these things, for me that would have been like top of my list. Well, you know, probably arguably one of the best films of this year so far. But obviously they can't do that because it's a property, and equally even using that property and using the technology side of it, it was still brilliant. So I'd say 7.5 for me.
Yeah. The only exactly the only reason that's sort of holding it back for me a little bit is the points you raised there, as in it got to a point in the film where I realized this would have been even better if it wasn't actually about an invisible man, if it was just about the effect that someone's narcissistic abuse can have on a victim, and then it can drive them to having psychosis or split personality, where they start seeing this enemy everywhere. You know, if it had been that film, like easily 8,
or even doing the things
8, 9 out of 10.
to blame it on. Because there were a few times where they played with that, where he would hit someone or do something even worse, and then it'll get blamed on her. Where obviously with the audience, you're always seeing it from your protagonist's perspective,
the hero's perspective. Yes. This is the other thing I realized about this Invisible Man sort of property, is that the reason we haven't had them so frequently, like we have other films like Vampire and Dracula, is there's only so much you can do with the Invisible Man. Like only so many tricks, like, you know, the breath in the air when there's no one there, or the condensation on the glass, or something moving that shouldn't move, or footprint, or the paint. But once you've done those tropes,
it's a one-hit wonder.
It's like a one-hit thing. So they're gonna have to wait like another 10 years before they can do something like this again. You know, whereas if they'd actually got rid of the Invisible Man aspect, they could have probably done a sequel much quicker, and they'd have more scope on what they can do with it. So like the last Invisible Man film I can remember is Hollow Man, the one with Kevin Bacon, which was like early 2000s. And in that, it was a science experiment, and you could tell they really wanted to do it because they had like they went crazy with the CGI of him going invisible. You know, like it was his skin, and then like his muscles, and then his bones, and then the blood, and then everything. You know, and you could tell they just got the technology to do it, and they were like, yeah, let's do an Invisible Man film. But that one's more B-movie, I'd say, in more action, more slasher elements. But what I did notice in this is towards the end, when it got to the third act and the Invisible Man was starting to take people out, it did start to feel like Hollow Man for me, especially the way he was doing it. And that just held it back a little bit to me.
Again, I do feel like that was a studio thing.
It's got to be.
It's got to be, because the way it's set out originally, you could see what way it was going, and then you could also see like, yeah, but you're the writer and forget about all the horror films. You're the writer and successful director of Upgrade. We want to see some of that bolt arm action. We want to see some of this, action scenes. Oh, okay, I guess I could put that in there, and then added it in the hospital breakout scene.
That does. I think you hit the nail on the head there, because
But it
that
could
scene
also-
did feel a bit uninspired. Not just the idea
Still
of
well
it,
done though.
but that was the best part of it, was his use of the camera and the staging. But no, I think so what did you say, 7.5? I'll stick with 7, I think, for now. A great film, but I feel like you wouldn't rush to watch it again anytime soon.
No, but I do suggest that people go watch it in the cinema, because with the sound effects and the score, you really want it to hit your core. So yeah, that was something that kept me moving forward in the edge of my to the edge of my seat. And I don't think it would have the exact same effect at home.
No, I think maybe watching it at home on your own, on Blu-ray one day, that might be pretty cool. But yeah, I think if you can go and catch it in the cinema, it's a good one to watch.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so that is The Invisible Man. 7 out of 10 from me.
7.5 for me.
From Joshy. So if you split the difference, that's 7.25. But I think the summary is it's a very enjoyable, eerie, atmospheric
Saturday night thriller
film.
Yeah, definitely.
Well worth watching.
100%.
Elisabeth Moss gives a great performance. Very understated and real world, and feels like a girl next door, which makes you buy into her story that much more. So yeah, that's The Invisible Man, Studio 7 podcast review. Yeah.
Remember to, again, check us out on Instagram at studio7.co.uk, our website, everything's everywhere. Obviously this podcast is streaming over all major platforms also. So subscribe, follow, hit that notification as well, so you know when we're uploading. We're uploading sometimes every week, but we're trying to hit every 2 weeks. And obviously if a review like this pops up with a new release, we'll try and hit it on the day as well. So the schedule should be we should be back to normal next week with our Korean cinema episode. And going forward, it'll be a scheduled episode the first and third week of every month, and then possibly a review in between. It is subject to change, so bear with us. But that's why you got to hit that notification.
That's why you got to hit the notification. That's why you got to subscribe. And don't forget to comment as well.
Spark up a conversation.
That's what's so cool about films, is you watch them and you talk to people about them. We don't want to just like be preaching here. We want to be interacting. So if you managed to watch The Invisible Man, let us know what you thought. And leave some suggestions on what we should review next. We'll put that up in a poll. And in the meantime, just keep following us.
Everything.
Cool. All right.
See you soon, guys.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.